Good morning and welcome everyone to Skill Up, How to Win Over Your Virtual Audience. My name is Jayda Leder-Luis. I'm an account director at Denterlein and a recent graduate of the Chamber's Boston Future Leaders program. On behalf of Denterlein and the Chamber, we hope you are joining us today feeling safe and healthy. Today's program is part of our new Skill Up series, a webinar series designed to engage and enhance Boston's workforce as we manage our work and our lives during COVID-19. As we all navigate through this unprecedented time, many of us are finding ourselves trying to make the most of virtual tools to engage audiences, whether that's in a team meeting, a client presentation, or interviewing for a new job. Today, we are joined by two phenomenal communicators who will help us explore best practices to win over your virtual audience, whomever they may be. But first, let's start with a few notes. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared on the Chamber's YouTube page shortly after the presentation. We hope these sessions will also be an opportunity to network. So as such, we ask that you adjust your screen name to include your first and last name or last initial. You can do that by right-clicking on the top right corner of your own video box, then click Rename. We will start the program by hearing from each of our speakers. After their brief overviews, you'll be put into breakout rooms where you will be given 2 exercises to practice our new virtual skills. We ask that you come back to the group with a few observations and questions to start the discussion. Please be sure to submit your questions through the webinar using the chat feature at the bottom of your Zoom video. We ask that you do remain muted throughout the webinar until you're split into your breakout sessions. You will be able to speak in those rooms, but then please mute yourselves once returning to the main group. And with that, I am very pleased to introduce today's special guests. Liz Brunner is a 30-year media veteran and CEO of her own firm, Brunner Communications. She is sought by high-profile individuals and organizations to build meaningful reputations and powerful brand identities within their markets. Liz is going to talk to us today about the mechanics of presenting. Joining Liz is Karla Driskill, Vice President at Hollister Staffing, where she's able to fulfill her life's mission of impacting, influencing, and inspiring people to live their own purpose. Karla will provide us perspective on preparing your mindset to truly engage your audience. So thank you both for joining us today. We are really lucky to have you with us to cover these 2 key topics that I know many of us are thinking about as we dive into this digital world of virtual presenting. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Liz.
All right, sounds great. Thank you so much, Jayda, and thanks to all of you for taking the time on a Friday morning. It's really great to have all of you here today. And I really want to appreciate your signing up when you registered and putting in some of the challenges that you're facing, because that really helped Karla and me figure out what we wanted to share with you today. So thanks very much. In my business, and in any business for that matter, having our communication goal is to generate results. And in order to get results, our communication must be perceived as we intend. And we need to be set up for success in order for that to happen. But often it doesn't, because we're not using the right tools or the right techniques to communicate virtually. Tools that you actually have within you. They're already at your disposal. Most people are not used to presenting and talking on video, let alone only on audio. And let's just say the camera never lies, and neither does the microphone. I imagine that many of you at one time or another have done some kind of virtual work. But now that almost everyone is doing it, we're quickly learning, boy, things are far from perfect. And I am not suggesting that they need to be perfect, but could they be a whole lot better? Absolutely, yes. People are working in ways they never have before. They're communicating in ways that they never thought about having to communicate. Look, nothing is ever going to take the place of face-to-face with people, because we're social creatures. We need that human interaction. And often that is when some of the best business is done, is in person. And let's cross our fingers that we get back there very, very soon. But more than likely, there will be many companies, in fact, maybe one of yours is going to do this, that you may find that, hey, virtual work is working when it's done well. And many of your companies may say, we're going to move more in that direction. So look at this period of time this morning and going forward as an opportunity to improve your communication skills overall, in person online, and with confidence. With confidence. Many of you said some of the challenges that you're facing right now are engagement and distractions. So let's start right there. If you've not done so already, I want you to turn off all of your notifications. I want you to close out all of your other apps because you'll get a better Wi-Fi connection. And put down your cell phone unless you're using it for this webinar today. No doubt some of you are multitaskers out there. I know who you are. Stop multitasking. I believe that multitasking makes you forget how to be present, and you need to be present on a webinar. Many of you expressed concern about your voice and your appearance on a webinar. Yes, both matter more than you think. When we communicate, we do so with our body language and our verbal delivery, which means our words and our voice. And we can visually see in person people, how they're reacting to us. Are they engaged or not? Are they paying attention? And all of that comes from just their body language. In fact, 65% of how you communicate comes from your body language, your non-verbal cues that you send out. And that means what's happening with your face, your facial expressions, your arms, your body, even your posture matters. The other 35% is your verbal delivery. That means that what you say, how you say it, and how you sound saying it matters. When you're going to be seen on video, such as this on a Zoom or Skype or any of the other platforms that are out there, self-awareness is key, and first impressions still do matter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's all it takes. 3 to 5 seconds for someone to form a perception of you before you have even said a single word. And that applies to in person, and that applies right now on video. That first visual impression matters. That means that you need to start by being set up for success. Let's start with the room that you're in when you're going to be on a webinar. Can you change rooms if you have something going on behind you that you don't want people to see? Can you simply change the angle of your body? Can you use a virtual background? That's what I'm using right now. Now, I do like to see people's homes and things like that because it's a nice personal connection. But I have a very tiny apartment here in Boston, so I like to use a virtual one. They can be a little tricky at times because if you see my hands, sometimes they disappear in a virtual background. Some people like to use just a profile photo on a Zoom, which is fine, but I also like to see people's faces. In order to see your face, you need to have light on your face. That means natural light, a lamp such as what I've got here. You don't want the light behind you, you want it in front of you so that we can see your face, so we can read your nonverbal cues, your facial expressions. And especially when it's in this little tiny thumbnail that you're looking at somebody, you really want to be able to see that. And you want to be able to smile. Whatever computer you're going to be using, placement is important. So no one is looking up your nostrils. No one's looking up at the ceiling. I can't tell you how many times I've seen both of those things. You need to raise your computer, put it on a box. I've got, I think, 6 or 7 books right now on which my computer is setting. What that does is it gives you a chance to be eye level with your camera lens. You may also need to angle the screen either forwards or backwards so that you are framing yourself in the right picture of that camera. Speaking of that camera and looking into it, an eye lens, when you're speaking, you do want to be looking directly into that camera. You might even have to put a little Post-it note with a little arrow on it to remind yourself to do that. Yes. Is it going to feel awkward? 100%. And I admit I've had a lot of practice looking into a camera with nobody looking back at me. But it really makes a difference. It's not going to feel like you're making eye contact, but from a virtual standpoint, it will. It's going to look like you're making eye contact. You are virtually connecting. It shows engagement. It shows respect. And it also shows that you are confident in yourself. You are confident in the message that you're delivering. That's why it's important. Listening, another nonverbal cue that you wouldn't associate with being on a webinar. Being a good communicator is knowing how to listen. And I admit, man, can it be challenging in a virtual world to listen with intention. Listen with intention, especially if there are distractions going on around you. But research shows that those who master the art of listening are the ones who are the most successful in business. Remember that. And dress appropriately. I'm not saying you need to be dressed to the nines. And many of you may think that it doesn't really matter. And some of you even said in your registrations that you struggle with just even motivating yourself to be, quote unquote, presentable. Granted, expectations may be a little bit more relaxed because we're not in an office environment. But I believe it matters, and here's why. It suggests your intention of your engagement. Your attire communicates your intentions. And there's also a psychological impact. It makes you feel better and it makes you feel more confident. All of these are nonverbal cues, but I want you to think of them as tools that are at your disposal, as opposed to, oh, I got to sit this way, I got to do that. They're tools. Remember that 65% of what you're communicating comes from those nonverbal cues before you've said a single word, and potentially what else could be seen on video. Now, let's flip the side to when maybe you're not going to be seen on video and it's just your voice that they're going to hear. That 65% of the way that you communicated nonverbally is now gone. You only have your voice. That means your voice is now 100% of the way that you're going to communicate. That means your content, your message, your story that you're delivering, your vocabulary, your articulation, everything matters. And while you may not consider speaking virtually as public speaking, I think it actually is in the broadest sense of the word. Speaking is a physical thing, and it requires energy. And if you think about it like that and you work at it like that, I promise you, you're going to have more success in doing all of this. Again, think of your voice as a communication tool that you can use. The pitch of your voice, is it too high or is it too low? That can be challenging for people to listen to. If you're too fast, people may not trust you. And if you're too slow, well, you could be very boring. Are you rambling? Are you running your sentences together? Don't do it. Your volume is energy. Too soft, and you may come across as shy, timid, or not confident at all. Too loud, sorry about that, you're going to sound like you're shouting. And even when you're using a computer microphone, I want you to speak at a 5, 6, or a 7. I want you to project on a scale of 1 to 10. You need to project your voice. Now, there is a microphone on the computer, and some people said that was challenging. When I'm doing presentations, yes, you probably noticed this little fuzzy thing. This is an external microphone, so easy to use, bought it on Amazon, just plugs into my USB port. And when you have to be a presenter, consider using one of those because you get better sound. All of these things that I'm talking about, I call vocal variety. That's what makes you interesting, sound compelling, commanding, and engaging. Monotone is the exact opposite of vocal variety, and I'm sure you've probably heard people doing presentations. I can hardly even do it. It's when you stay in one lane. It's so boring. Your words don't lead the way. It's the emotion and the energy that you put behind them that lead the way. Your voice leads the way. And you must get rid of the filler words. You know what I'm talking about, all the ums, the ahs, the so's, the likes. Why does it matter? Because people are going to tune you out when you have them and you lose credibility. Why does it happen? Well, sometimes it's just simply nerves and you forget what you're going to say. It happens. Or maybe you don't know your content well enough. That's another reason it happens. Just pause. Take a breath. Think about what you want to say and then go on. There is power in the pause. Remember that. Here's another challenge. Oh my goodness. I think there's an epidemic of what I call the up pitch, up speak, up talk. That's when the pitch of your voice goes up at the end of a sentence that sounds like a question when it's really a statement. My name's Liz Brunner. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. My name's Liz Brunner. Why does it matter? Because it makes you sound less believable, less trustworthy, less credible, less confident. And this is a gender neutral issue, men who are on the webinar this morning. You have it as well as women. When you pause and when you think about what you're going to say and you know what you're going to say, that helps minimize the up pitch. And your message, your content is even more important. Make sure that what you share is succinct. Think shorter sentences. Use conversational language and tell me the stories. We're on information overload these days. Stories are what cut through the noise. And if you have to use any kind of slides, a slide deck when you're doing a presentation, man, keep it simple. Limit your content on that screen. You don't want your listener to have to figure out, oh, should I be reading what's on the screen or should I be listening to the person? If they're not in sync and there's too much content, you're going to lose people. Keep it simple. And finally, Liz's 4 C's. Number 1 is confidence. Be your best authentic self. Number 2 is your content. Know your content well. Number 3 is clarity of your content. Can everyone understand the concepts that you're putting forth? And number 4, deliver it in a conversational way. Does that mean practicing? Yes, it does. And you need to practice your content out loud before you have to do it live. Oh my gosh, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more I can teach you of how to communicate in this virtual world, but my 10 minutes are now up. I am going to have some exercises for you when you go out into the breakout rooms, and we're going to be sharing those with you a little bit later after Karla gets going here. And as important as your energy is and your voice and all of the things I just talked about, so too is your mindset. Which brings me to Karla Driskill. She's another fantastic leadership coach. She's as passionate as I am about helping people reach their full potential. Karla, take it away.
Thank you, Liz. And I'm so excited to see all of you today. I have to tell you, as an extrovert, this COVID-19 is about to drive me crazy. I did a presentation yesterday and said, I'm so lonely, I feel like I could go out and hug a tree right now. And so I'm just glad to see your faces. And if you don't have your cameras on, I'd love to see your faces because this snippet of time has to last me for a while today. It's going to be a while before I'm around anybody other than my husband, my daughter, and my dogs. So thank you so much for showing up. And thank you, Liz, for those amazing tips. I have to tell you, as Liz was sharing, I thought, I wish I'd taken her class before I did this. It's a little intimidating to think about, oh, am I going to have my voice go up? Where's my mic? But those were great tips. I will be listening to the recording and taking notes because all of those were such fabulous reminders. Thank you. And what I want to share with you today, as Liz mentioned, is about the proper mindset to have when you're getting ready to do a presentation. Because 80% of success in any endeavor has to do with your mindset. So even if you take copious notes of the how-tos of presenting, if you aren't in the right mindset when you get ready to do the presentation, you are not going to be able to connect with your audience. And that is the most important piece, whether you're live or virtual, is the ability to really establish connection. I think it's important to understand before you go into any presentation, it's important to be aware that there are always 3 conversations going on at any time. There's the conversation that's going on in your head. And research tells us that 80 to 85% of the thoughts that you have on a regular basis are negative. And if you are unaware, then that conversation is going to sabotage any conversation that you've practiced. If you aren't able to recognize that negative thought that says something like, what do you mean I have to do a virtual presentation? There's going to be 100 people there. What if I lose them? What if my dog barks? What am I going to do? What if I forget everything I've practiced? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not good enough to do this. If you don't recognize that chatter and immediately stop it and focus your mind on the reality that you've been asked to do this because you are capable and you are competent, I have to tell you, I practice positive self-talk all the time. In fact, if you could have seen me before this presentation, you might have thought I was wacko because I was telling myself, you've got this, Karla. You can do this. You know this material. I talk to myself all the time because my voice has to be louder than the voice in my head that tells me you don't know what you're doing. So I want you to be aware that that voice is not going to stop ever. But in order to do a good job at any presentation, you have to be able to silence it. The second conversation is clearly the conversation that you are having. And I think it's important to remind yourself that no presentation is effective unless it's a conversation. No one wants to be talked at, not in person, and especially not virtually. So when I'm preparing for any talk, I want to make sure that I have crafted it in such a way that my audience and I feel like we're having a cup of coffee together. And third, it's important to understand that there is a collective conversation going on. And that's the conversation that may not be spoken, but we're all aware of it. In our current reality, the collective conversation is filled with fear, it's filled with anxiety, it's filled with stress, it's filled with overwhelm, and it's filled with uncertainty. And as a presenter, if you don't acknowledge that and you're not aware of that, you are not going to be able to connect with your audience. So the most important thing that I want to share with you today is the concept of whether you are in person or virtual, reminding yourself that people will connect with you when you are real and whenever you are authentic. At Hollister Institute, we have an acronym for REAL that we use whenever we are training people, whether it's to have a conversation with a teammate, whether it's to have a conversation with a client, whether it's to have a conversation virtually or in person. We believe the most important element of that is to be relatable, engaged, authentic, and loving. And I want to briefly double click on each of those words to give you a framework within which to prepare any presentation. The first one about being relatable. If you want your audience to be moved by your content, moved to action, none of us do a presentation unless our underlying motive is we want to influence someone to action. Your audience needs to know that you can relate to them. So I loved that Liz brought up, and she even used the comments that you submitted prior to this webinar. That shows that Liz took time to relate to you where you are. The more you can do research on your audience before you present to them, the better you're going to be able to tie in your content to their reality and connect with them, whether virtually or in person. The second letter, E in real, engaged. Not only is it important for you to engage with your audience, but it's important that you are engaging. So watch your energy, smile, raise your energy. And there are several ways that you can do that. I play upbeat music before I'm going to do any presentation to shift my mental state. In fact, my husband came and knocked on the bathroom door while I was putting on my makeup. I'm like, babe, I'm setting my mindset. I'm singing my songs. Don't bug me right now. If you have your energy up, you are going to be engaging and able to engage with your audience. The third letter, A, authentic. It's important to recognize that we are just two humans in a conversation. I may have studied this material more, but I want to connect with you on the level of our humanity, because that's what's going to move people and inspire people to act on whatever you're presenting. And finally, loving. There are only two emotions that as humans we feel. We are either wired and we are either going to experience fear or we are going to experience love. Fear shows up in many different capacities. It shows up as anxiety. It shows up as overwhelm. It shows up as that feeling, that knot in the pit of your stomach and in your throat that says, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? We can only quiet fear when we take time to presence ourselves to love. And we can do that by taking a few deep breaths and remembering that I'm here to serve my audience. I'm not here to try and get my content across. I'm here to serve you. And if I am aware when I come into that conversation of who you are as a human, of the collective conversation, and I'm able to silence the conversation going on in my head, then whether I am virtual or in person, I'm going to be effective in that conversation. So before we go into our exercise, I just want to close my portion with a thought that it takes courage to connect with people, whether you are in person or virtual. And whenever we have the courage to take off our mask, to connect in our humanness, then whether the dog barks, whether the kids disturb us, whether I make a mistake in my speech, whether I forget what I've done, because I can practice all the time, I've done it, and then I get up and I go blank. If I'm able to be real and connect with you in that short moment, that's where the magic happens. And I love Brene Brown. She doesn't know it, but she's my best friend. Someday I'm going to meet her and tell her we've been best friends for a long time, Brene. You just didn't know it. And I want to just share with you a thought that means a lot to me and that I remind myself of anytime before I present. Authenticity is the choice to show up and be real, the choice to be honest, the choice to let our true selves be seen. If we commit to that, we will make a difference in the lives of the people that we present to every time, even if we forget our words, even if the lighting's not perfect, we will be able to impact and influence those that we connect with. So now I'm going to turn it over to Liz, and Liz is going to share with us an exercise that we're going to do in groups, and I'm really excited about it.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Karla. I love all of those words. And I'm going to add to your Brene Brown quote with one of my own, which is sometimes being imperfect is more perfect because you are being your best authentic self. There you have it. And I love the courage too, because we choose courage every day. So one of the first courageous things people are going to do later on this afternoon, not in the breakout session, but I want them to go back and listen to their outgoing voicemail message. And if they have any up pitch, then I want them to change it and re-record it. The exercise in the break room is that you're going to be given 30 seconds and somebody needs to time you. You're going to say your name. You're going to say the company you're from, and your biggest challenge and your biggest surprise blessing that has come out of staying at home in this time frame. Now, 30 seconds. Are you framed correctly in the computer? Can you do anything to change it, angle it? You may not be able to in this moment of time. Then I want your guests in your room to tell you, how was your voice? Was it too high? Was it too fast? Did you have a pitch? Did you project? Did you tell the story? All the things that I talked about a moment ago, try and incorporate. I know it's a very short exercise, but see what you can do with that. Karla, I know you have an exercise as well.
I do, and we will be doing that. I think we're going to come back together.
Yes.
We'll do another breakout. So I will share with you that exercise whenever we come back together before we do this breakout.
All right. I think we're ready to divert, yes?
Perfect, yes. So now we will be separating into the breakout rooms for 15 minutes. You'll see a pop-up window, and we'd ask you to click join when that window appears. There'll be a timer at the top right corner of your screen, and you'll automatically rejoin this main room at the end of those 15 minutes.
Oh my gosh, Jayda.
Yes.
Was I supposed to? I thought we were coming back, but we're not. So they.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Do you want to share your prompt now?
I forgot.
They will also. No worries. Yes. They'll also be in the chat function, so we can have them both side by side. But yes, Karla, why don't you give us?
Well, in the interest of being real, just jump in and say, "Whoops, I missed that cue." The exercise that I'm going to request that you do is share which one of those 4 ingredients of authenticity, relatable, engaged, authentic, or loving, will be the most challenging for you, and what steps will you take to overcome that during your next presentation? Thanks, Jayda.
No worries. All right. Again, you'll see those prompts in the chat function and a pop-up window that'll lead you to your breakout sessions. Enjoy your conversation. We'll see you back here in 15 minutes. Hello, everybody. We're just starting to come back from our breakout rooms. Give everyone a minute to rejoin. Hello, pretty faces. Great. Well, I hope everyone's breakout session conversations were as delightful as mine. I got to meet some new friends, practice the tips from Liz and Karla, and got to know a couple of people. So that's really good. So if you have any questions, we're going to dive into a Q&A now. You can use the chat function at the bottom of Zoom to ask your question to the entire group. But as you registered, several of you shared some questions you already knew you were going to have. So I'll start with those. I see Liz. I see Karla. Yes, great. All right. So Karla, you've talked about engagement, and it can be really difficult to know whether or not you've got someone's attention. How do you know whether your virtual audience is engaged? And how do you keep people from multitasking?
I think that's a great question, Jayda. And whenever I read over that initially this morning, I thought, oh, I wish Liz had that question. Because
I'm happy to answer if you want me to, but go ahead, Karla.
and I don't know that my answer is really going to be what people want to hear. And the truth is, I don't believe you can control whether or not someone is engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And there isn't 3 points and a promise that you can do everything and people will automatically engage. So I think the biggest challenge is to, first of all, recognize that voice in our head, that conversation in your head that is telling you, you must not be doing a good job because people aren't listening or people are multitasking. Certainly there are things that you can do in terms of how you craft your presentation to make sure that there are opportunities for interaction. Personally, I like to share a point and then engage my audience and give them an opportunity to answer either through chat or share a point. If it's a larger audience, I do breakout rooms and give them an opportunity to practice whatever that point is. And at the end of the day, it's still important to recognize that you can do everything you know to do, and people still may not be willing to turn their camera on, and they still may not be willing to engage. And if I'm aware that I've done all I can do, and I can tell myself, you've done a great job, Karla, and then release the results, then I'm going to be able to be fully present and there to serve without feeling attached to how it has to look like on my end. I may never know the person that I may have impacted. I just trust that I have, whether their camera's on or not.
It's a great tip. Liz, any other thoughts on that?
She said it all. Let's go on to more questions.
Okay, great. Well, Liz, here's one for you. Since you have so much experience being on the news and in front of a video camera, which can make people's skin crawl, how do you get the confidence needed to really get the mindset, do virtual presentations, and feel successful?
It really comes down to knowing your content. Preparation, preparation, preparation. You heard Karla say it earlier. I say it all the time in my workshops and with my clients. 80% of your success comes from preparation, which means you have to know your content. You have to put your story together in the right format. I do this all the time with people. I have them work, what is my story? And a lot of people are, well, I'm going to tell you this today. And then they tell me, what they just told me. Nyeh. That's old school. You need to know your content. You need to practice your content out loud. And when you practice, that gives you confidence. And I want to also add one other point. A lot of people have been asking, do I use notes? Yes, I do. I don't know if you can see them right now. Okay, they're dissolving because of my virtual background. But what I do is I put them up on my keyboard, which is raised. As I told you, my computer is raised. So my notes are right there, and I literally just slide them over and slide them over. You don't need to flip them over because the page is done, the page is done. I do not write out a script. I bullet point and I highlight and I use big font, 18 points, so that all I have to do is just glance down. I know what I'm going to say, but when you put your content in order and you create your content, which is hugely important, and you practice it out loud, I also have a methodology for practicing, which is I want people to practice backwards. Briefly, if you have a presentation and you divide it into, I'll just use 3 because it's shorter, practice section 3 by itself. Then you practice section 2 and then section 3. And then you practice section 1, 2, and 3. Why do you do that? There's muscle memory that happens with your brain and your mouth. You practice it out loud. And every time you get to section 2, then section 3, then section 4, your brain thinks you're back at the beginning. Your energy level stays high. You'll sound more confident. And Karla and I both talked about this. It's energy, energy, energy. It takes a lot of energy to do this and do it well. It does. No way to get around it.
That is such a great tip to practice backwards. I personally, when I have notes, I try to not read off of a script because then you fumble. You want to be authentic, engaged,
100%.
real. But practicing backwards, I'm definitely going to use that.
It works. I promise you. I call it the Brunner methodology because it works.
All right, I have another question here that's similar to the first, but from the listener point of view. How can you, as a listener, show that you're engaged on a Zoom?
Well, I think for me, whenever people are smiling at me and nodding their head, that is like water in the desert. Please smile, comment, and take notes. If you really care about what I'm saying, I know that it's important to you when you are taking notes. And that is such a present and a gift to a speaker to know that you are finding value in what they're sharing with you.
I concur. I love it when people in person or virtually, I see them nodding, acknowledging, being engaged, looking engaged, listening with intention. I love that in person or virtually. You know, as Karla said, we are here to serve. This is why we do the work that we do. And I'm as passionate as she is about helping people get better at something. And when we feel like you're taking that in and you're like a sponge and we see that you're being that sponge, it's the best feeling in the world to be able to help somebody in that way.
I agree.
We have time for a couple more questions, and one that I know is probably on many people's minds, technology. I had a Zoom call where my internet ran out, and so I had to join immediately by phone. How do you keep your cool when you experience tech issues?
First of all, don't panic. That's the first thing, don't panic. And have a backup plan. In your case, you used your cell phone, so you were ready to go, or you might have an iPad. You do have to have a backup plan. And the other thing that I encourage everybody is, if you can, do a dress rehearsal. If you're doing a large presentation, do a dress rehearsal. No, can you control everything? No, you can't. And technology, as wonderful as it is, when it doesn't work, and it really messes things up. But the first thing is don't panic. And the other thing people might want to consider doing when you do a dress rehearsal, record it. So that if you have to play it back because something went kaflooey, you've got a backup plan.
Well, and I would just add to that, to expect to have technology issues. Then you're not surprised. That's why you have a backup plan, because if you go in knowing I could have a problem, then you're prepared for it. And the second thing I would add is, in the course of being real, I had a presentation the other night. We had so many technology issues and we practiced beforehand. And to just name it, whenever we were able to come back, and I just said, I am so sorry for all the technology issues that we've had. Thank you for sticking with us. This is going to be worth your time. So name it. And we are the leaders of the presentation. People are going to be looking to us to gauge how they interact and react. Mm-hmm. Stay calm, and if I'm not flustered, and if I can just be human and name it, then we can move right past it and get on to the presentation.
And I'm going to add one other thing to that. I'm used to dealing with breaking news where all kinds of stuff is happening all at the same time. You can't panic. You just have to stay calm, keep moving forward in any way that you can.
And I'd say the same applies to those inevitable interruptions. If it's from a puppy, a child, a husband, whomever it might be, you come to expect those and prepare for them and keep your cool.
I agree.
All right. Last question here. I know we've got a lot of other questions that hopefully we can answer as we send around the link to the YouTube recording. The last question here, where do you get your Zoom backgrounds? Liz, you've got a great one. I thought it was your
I
house.
just went online, and I just Googled virtual backgrounds. And then there was an article, I think it was in the Boston Globe last weekend, and it was the Brattle Street bookstore that was offering a bunch of different Zooms. And I think this is where I got this one from. And I was like, oh, I love this one. I love this one. But again, they're pretty tricky. Not all of them work. Some people like to use like a personal photo from a vacation. And I think that's fine if you're doing a virtual cocktail hour. But in a professional setting, I prefer to either have something like this or do a real background. But as I said, my apartment's so tiny that this is the best way for me to do it.
I have no clue. I'm going to do what Liz said. You can see I don't have one. I'm wishing I had Liz's right now. I'm be looking into that.
I've seen a bunch of area organizations, whether it's Fenway Park or different neighborhood associations, sharing some downloadable photos that you can use as Zoom backgrounds. So definitely adds a little bit of personality and realness to those virtual presentations.
It's fun. It's fun.
All right, well, that is the end of our time. I want to thank you all for joining us today. It's been really fun gaining new insight into how to win over a virtual audience. And I know that we'll be walking away with a few key takeaways. Get your lighting right, speak with confidence, and get in the right mindset before you actually hit launch on Zoom. So Liz and Karla have created handouts, which will be circulating to this group after the session through email. But before we close, I do want to highlight that the Boston Chamber of Commerce has a packed digital calendar. We're moving into a new world, and they've got series and sessions for each of us. Every Friday, you'll find skills-based webinars like this as part of the Skill Up series. Next week is identifying your entrepreneurial skills and style, so definitely tune in for that. Also, the Small Business of the Year Awards are currently open, but they close today. So this is a great opportunity for us as business leaders to support some of our favorite local businesses. So I'd encourage you to nominate your favorite to win an award. And finally, you can learn more by going to bostonchamber.com, signing up for the newsletter, and following them on social media. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, Liz and Karla and everyone at the Chamber. And I hope you have a wonderful Friday. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye, all.
Have a good weekend.